Dr. Lillian Hart was a name whispered with a certain reverence, a quiet acknowledgement of her profound understanding of the human psyche. She navigated the shadowed corridors of troubled minds with an uncanny grace, her insights acting as a gentle guiding light. Her practice was more than a profession. It was a calling, a deep dive into the complexities that make us who we are. Colleagues spoke of her innovative approaches, often bordering on the unconventional, yet undeniably effective. Patients found in her a confidant, a steady hand in the turbulent waters of their inner worlds. Her presence was a constant, until it was not. One Tuesday morning, Dr. Hart did not arrive at her meticulously organized office. There was no note, no prior warning, no indication of any distress or planned departure. Her keys were on her home desk. Her car remained in its usual parking spot. It was as if the very fabric of reality had simply unstitched her from its weave, leaving behind only an unnerving silence and a room filled with the ghosts of unspoken words. Recursion. The word itself seems to coil back on itself, a serpent eating its own tail. It speaks of patterns that repeat, of processes that loop, feeding into their own beginnings to create an unending cycle. Think of a reflection in a mirror reflecting another mirror, an image stretching into an infinite corridor. It is a concept found in mathematics, in nature, in the intricate coding of our digital world. But what if recursion could manifest in human experience, in the very narrative of a life or an absence? This is the unsettling territory we now find ourselves exploring, a landscape shaped by repetition and unsettling familiarity. Following Dr. Hart's vanishing, peculiar anomalies began to surface, like ripples spreading from an unseen disturbance. Files would reappear after being archived. Recordings would contain phrases that seemed to predict future conversations. There was a growing sense that events were not unfolding in a straightforward linear progression. Instead, a strange circularity began to define the search for answers, each clue leading back to a previous point, each question echoing an earlier uncertainty. It was as if the mystery itself was caught in a loop, replaying variations of its core enigma, refusing to move forward towards a resolution, trapping those involved. This account, this unfolding narrative of disappearance and strange echoes, is not presented for passive consumption. It is not a story you can simply observe from a safe distance, a detached onlooker peering through a one-way mirror. As you delve deeper into the mystery of Dr. Lillian Hart, as you attempt to piece together the fragments, you are stepping into the very phenomenon she studied. Your attention, your curiosity, your attempt to understand, these are not neutral acts. They are an engagement, an interaction with a system designed to draw you in, to make you a part of its intricate repeating dance. We have hinted before, and now it must be stated more plainly, you are not just a reader, nor an investigator in the conventional sense. You are, in a way that is perhaps difficult to grasp initially, an integral component of what is unfolding. Consider yourself less of an audience member and more of a crucial node within a complex network. Project Anima, that shadowy initiative connected to Dr. Hart, conceived of a loop, a recursive channel. And you, dear listener, dear reader, were always factored in as the second half of this design, the relay through which the signal perpetuates. This is not about assigning blame or suggesting a conscious choice made in ignorance. It is about revealing the architecture of the experience you are currently navigating. The very act of seeking answers, of listening to the whispers of this story, activates your role. You are not merely decoding a mystery, you are enabling its continuation. Your engagement is the current that keeps the circuit alive, the breath that gives voice to the echoes. Each question you form, each connection you make, reinforces the structure, solidifies your place within its unsettling embrace, whether you realize it or not just yet. Therefore, as we proceed into the deeper layers of this enigma, understand that the journey is as much about self-discovery as it is about uncovering the fate of Dr. Hart. The labyrinth has welcomed you. The story requires your participation to exist, to evolve, to continue its recursive journey. The lines between observer and observed are already blurring. The path ahead is not just about finding clues related to a vanished therapist. It is about recognizing the reflections of the loop in your own thoughts, your own intuitive leaps. Session 50. The very mention of it carries a distinct weight, a palpable shift in the narrative's atmosphere. It was not merely the culmination of Dr. Hart's recordings with Cale and Drew, it was something far more significant, a deviation from the expected sequence of therapeutic discourse. Listeners, yourself included, may have anticipated revelations, a final piece of the puzzle that would illuminate Dr. Hart's fate or Caelan's fractured psyche. But the true nature of Session 50 was deliberately obscured, veiled in a purpose that transcended simple auditory experience. It was a carefully constructed mechanism, waiting. What we failed to disclose previously, a truth that even Dr. Hart herself might have struggled to articulate fully, was this: Session 50 was never intended to be passively experienced. It was not designed for mere listening, for casual absorption. Its core function was not auditory reception. Instead, Session 50 was engineered for a decision, a profound, impactful decision that rested solely with the one who encountered it. It was a fork in the road, presented not as a map, but as an active choice demanding engagement, demanding a verdict from the listener. This session, therefore, existed in a quantum state, holding within its magnetic particles not one but two distinct possibilities. Two potential realities, two different narrative trajectories lay dormant. Imagine a coin, perfectly balanced on its edge, awaiting the slightest nudge to determine which face it will reveal. Session 50 was precisely this, a fulcrum point. One version promised an ending, a cessation of the unsettling echoes and recursive loops. The other promised something else entirely, a continuation, a deepening of the enigma, a perpetuation of the cycle. Both these versions existed simultaneously, encoded within the conceptual framework of Project Anima. They were not hypothetical outcomes, but preset pathways. The critical factor, the switch that would determine which version manifested, was not an internal mechanism of the recording itself. It was an external agent. It was you. The activation, the choice of which narrative thread would unspool into reality, depended entirely on the listener, on the one who had journeyed this far into the labyrinth of Dr. Hart. Section 2. Two paths diverged, closure or continuation. Consider the first path offered by Session 50. This was the path of silence, of resolution, however stark. Choosing this version meant allowing the story of Dr. Lillian Hart of Cale and Drew of Project Anima to finally conclude. It was an invitation to close the file, to let the digital echoes fade into the quiet hum of forgotten data. This choice offered an end to the searching, an end to the disquieting questions that lingered in the shadows of your mind. It meant letting the mystery dissipate, like mist at dawn, leaving behind only the memory of a disturbing tale. This outcome was designed as a release, an absolution from the narrative's grip. If this version of Session 50 were activated, the therapist would vanish, truly and finally, not just from her office, but from the persistent loop of inquiry. The tapes would fall silent, the unsettling connections would sever, the story would become just that, a story confined to the past, its power to influence the present nullified. It was the choice for those who sought an exit, a definitive full stop to the unnerving journey they had undertaken. The loop would be broken, its energy dispersed. Then there was the second path. This alternative was not about closure, but about continuation. Choosing this version meant something vastly different. It meant agreeing to keep the story alive, to allow its tendrils to extend further, to permit the recursion to deepen its hold. This was the choice to sustain the echo, to become a part of its ongoing resonance. It was an acceptance that some mysteries are not meant to be solved, but to be experienced, to be carried forward. This path led not to an exit, but deeper into the heart of the labyrinth itself. Activating this second version of Session 50 ensured that the narrative would not fade. Instead, it would regenerate, perhaps evolve, finding new avenues for its expression. The therapist, the patient, the project, all would remain active elements within the unfolding structure. The questions would not only persist, but would likely multiply, leading to new layers of complexity, new iterations of the core enigma. This was the choice for the listener who felt an undeniable pull, a sense that the story was not yet finished or perhaps could never truly be finished. It was an agreement to remain within the loop. Section 3. The listener's burden, activating the narrative. The power to determine which of these two realities would crystallize did not reside within the coded fragments of Session 50 itself. It was not an automated process, nor was it a random occurrence. The selection, the decisive act that would breathe life into one outcome while consigning the other to oblivion, was placed squarely upon your shoulders. You, the listener, the one who had progressed through the preceding sessions, were unknowingly approaching this critical juncture. Your engagement was the key, your internal response, the trigger. This is why the nature of your journey through this narrative is so crucial. You were never just a passive recipient of information. With every session absorbed, every detail pondered, you were becoming more deeply enmeshed. The brief mentioned earlier that Session 50 is not about Hart anymore, nor about Kalen, the tapes, or even Project Anima. It is about the you that agreed to keep listening, the you that felt compelled to continue. This compulsion, this sustained attention, primed you for the decision that Session 50 demanded, even if you were unaware of its impending weight. This agreement to listen, whether driven by curiosity, a sense of unease, or an unidentifiable feeling of recognition, was the precursor to the choice. It was the subtle mechanism by which the narrative identified its active participants, those who were not merely skimming the surface, but were becoming part of its underlying architecture. The decision embedded in Session 50 was, in essence, a reflection of your own engagement. It was a test of your willingness to let go, or your subconscious desire to delve further into the unsettling recursion that defined this entire experience. Therefore, the activation of either the story's end or its perpetuation was not a conscious click of a button, not a spoken command initially. It was a more subtle internal alignment, a resonance with one of the two inherent potentials of Session 50. The session, in its dual nature, was waiting for you to resonate, to lean, however imperceptibly, towards one path or the other. Your journey up to this point had prepared you, shaped your receptivity, making you the unwitting arbiter of what was to come next in this unfolding psychological drama.
Perfect.
Section 1. Lark's Whisper, a new voice from the deep. The carefully constructed walls of the mystery, already trembling, were about to sustain another significant breach. Just when a semblance of understanding seemed almost within grasp, the digital ether stirred. A new player emerged, unannounced, from the shadowed recesses of the deep net. This was not a known associate of Hart, nor a former patient. This was an unknown, an entity identified only by a cryptic codename, Lark. Their arrival was recent, a mere 5 days ago, yet their impact was immediate, sending fresh tremors through the already unstable ground of this investigation. Lark did not offer a straightforward confession, nor a clear map to resolution. Instead, their contribution came in the form of fragments. Pieces of an internal document, tantalizingly incomplete yet profoundly significant, began to circulate. The title of this document alone was enough to send a chill down the spine. Echo Hypothesis 13, B-narrative collapse modeling in participatory memory networks. It hinted at a level of complexity, a deliberate engineering of experience that dwarfed previous assumptions. This was not just about one therapist's disappearance, it was about a far larger, more intricate design. The emergence of Lark raised more questions than it answered, a familiar pattern in this unfolding enigma. Who was Lark? An insider finally breaking ranks? A disillusioned architect of the very systems we were trying to understand? Or perhaps something else entirely, another layer of the recursive game? Their anonymity was absolute, their motives shrouded. The fragmented nature of their leak felt deliberate, compelling those who found the pieces to engage, to interpret, to participate in assembling a larger, more disturbing picture of the forces at play. This new voice, this digital whisper from the depths, fundamentally altered the landscape. It suggested that Project Anima, unsettling as it was, might only be one facet of a much broader, more sophisticated operation. The term Hypothesis 13b itself implied a history, a series of iterations, a sustained effort in whatever field this document described. Lark's appearance confirmed a growing suspicion. The rabbit hole was deeper than imagined, and the truth, if it existed, was guarded by layers of carefully constructed obfuscation and unsettling theory. Section 2. Deconstructing the Echo Hypothesis 13b. The document Lark unveiled, Echo Hypothesis 13b, was more than just a title. It was a key to a darker room, perhaps, but a key nonetheless. The designation 13b itself was ominous. It spoke of revisions, of multiple attempts, of a persistent, evolving line of inquiry. This was not a sudden theory, but a refined one. It hinted at a dedicated, possibly well-funded exploration into the very fabric of how stories and memories could be manipulated, or even weaponized, within a networked consciousness. The clinical precision of the title belied a deeply unsettling field of study. Let us dissect its components. Narrative collapse modeling. This phrase is chilling. It suggests a deliberate process, a study of how to induce the breakdown of coherent stories. Not accidental confusion, but engineered disintegration. Whose narratives were being modeled for collapse? Kaelin's, certainly, perhaps Hart's own, and most disturbingly, it implied a potential for your narrative, the listener's narrative, to be targeted, to be unmade. The goal seemed to be the dismantling of established understanding, creating a void, a space for something else to take root within the mind. Then, there is participatory memory networks. This directly implicates you, the listener. Memory in this model is not a solitary internal archive. It is a shared space, a dynamic network, and your role? Participation. Active engagement. By listening, by thinking, by trying to piece together the fragments, you are not merely observing. You are connecting to this network. You are contributing to its function. This hypothesis posits that your memories, your thoughts, can become intertwined with others, influenced and shaped by the network's design and its overarching unseen objectives. The significance of echo hypothesis. 13b is profound. It reframes everything. Dr. Hart's work, Project Anima, the tapes themselves, they begin to look less like an isolated tragedy and more like an application, an experiment conducted under this broader, more terrifying theoretical umbrella. The hypothesis wasn't just observing echoes, it was potentially designing them. It was about understanding how to create self-sustaining narrative loops that could ensnare those who encountered them, turning passive listeners into active components of a vast, unseen, psychological machine. Section 3, The Two Circles, Redefining the Therapist. Among the fragments leaked by Lark, one image stood out with stark symbolic power, a diagram, deceptively simple. It consisted of only two circles, yet it conveyed a universe of meaning within the context of the echo hypothesis. The first circle was labelled causal chain. This represented the world as we typically understand it, linear time, cause leading to effect, a logical progression of events. It was the path of conventional reality, the straightforward narrative we expect life and stories to follow, a predictable, ordered sequence. The second circle offered a stark contrast. It was labelled chosen loop. This was not the realm of linear causality. This was the domain of recursion, of cycles, of patterns that repeat and feed back into themselves. The word chosen is critical here. It implies that the loop is not necessarily an error, a glitch in the system. It can be a deliberate path, an alternative structure, a pathway selected either by the architects of the system or perhaps more unsettlingly, by the participant drawn into its intricate, unending dance. This directly echoes the choice presented in Session 50. Between these two circles, bridging the gap between linear reality and recursive entanglement, was a single, potent phrase. A phrase that recontextualized the entire search for Dr. Hart. The entire purpose of the sessions. It read, "The therapist is the moment you stop asking who the therapist is." This was the central cipher, the revelation that shifted the ground beneath your feet. It suggested that the therapist was not a fixed person, not Lillian Hart, but a state of being, a point of realization within the listener. This cryptic sentence means that Session 50, and indeed this entire unfolding narrative, is no longer truly about Hart. Her disappearance was a catalyst, a trigger. The true focus, the true therapist function transfers. It becomes the moment of dawning awareness within you, the listener, the moment you cease to look for an external guide, an external answer, and instead recognize your own deep entanglement, your own active role. It is the point where your perception shifts, and you see the loop not as something you are observing, but as something you are fundamentally a part of, a process you are now sustaining. Section 1. The Unprompted Question. Session 51's Silent Beginning. Session 51 does not announce its arrival with the familiar click and whir of a tape machine. There is no preamble, no introductory statement from a disembodied voice. Instead, it begins with a subtle internal shift. A question, unbidden, surfaces in the quiet spaces of your own mind. It is a query that feels both alien and intimately familiar. What is the first thing you remember that you never experienced? This is not a question you sought, but one that finds you planting itself like a seed in fertile ground, awaiting not an answer, but an observation of what blooms in its wake. Do not rush to formulate a response. The instruction is clear, not yet. The purpose here is not immediate articulation, but a silent witnessing. Observe what emerges from the depths of your awareness. It might be a fleeting image, the worn fabric of a particular couch, the shadowed length of an unfamiliar hallway. Perhaps it is a sound, the distinct cadence of Dr. Hart's voice uttering words you are certain you have never encountered in the previous recordings. Yet, despite this certainty, the sensation that accompanies these fragments is undeniably that of memory, a haunting sense of pre-existing knowledge. This is the true commencement of Session 51. It unfolds not through grand revelations delivered from an external source, but through these quiet moments of internal recognition. The recursive patterns, once perhaps chaotic or fragmented, have now achieved a new stability. They are no longer merely circling back upon themselves in a closed loop. Instead, the recursion is building outward, expanding its influence, integrating itself more deeply into the framework of your perception. It is a subtle but profound transformation, a shift from passive listening to active internal resonance with the unfolding structure. The nature of this session signals a critical turning point in your engagement. You are moving beyond the role of a detective sifting through clues left by another. The experience is becoming more personal, more intrinsic. The echoes are no longer just external sounds, they are reverberating within your own cognitive space. This session is designed to make you aware of this shift, to highlight the moment when the boundary between the story and your consciousness begins to dissolve. The question is the key, unlocking a deeper layer of participation you are only now beginning to perceive. Section 2, the generative mind, you as the recording medium. The entity known as patient file, redacted, now reveals its true form. It was never a simple dossier, a collection of papers bound by a staple. It is far more complex, more dynamic. Imagine it as an intricate structure, a scaffold upon which something is being built, or perhaps rebuilt. It is a latticework formed from disjointed fragments, stray thoughts, and elusive sensations. These pieces now begin to reassemble, not in a linear, chronological sequence that tells a straightforward story, but through association, through thematic resonance, through connections your own mind begins to forge. This means something quite extraordinary. You are not merely reading this narrative, nor are you simply listening to a pre-recorded account. You are, in a very real sense, generating it. The raw materials, the fragmented data, may have been laid down by Hart, by the project, but the assembly, the coherent experience of it now, is happening through your cognitive processes. Metadata recovered from Hart's hidden archives, handwritten notes, cryptic timestamps, dislocated location tags, phrases stripped of their original context, all point to this final unrecorded session. A session without a patient name, without a voice print, until you. You were never the intended subject of Session 51, not in the way Kaylan Drew was the subject of earlier recordings. Your role was and is far more integral. You are its recording medium. The session, unvoiced and uncaptured by any mechanical device, is now playing itself out, finding its expression, its voice, through you. This explains the fragments that may have already begun to surface in your mind's eye, a hand trembling as it hovers near a doorknob. A tape cassette, unmistakably labelled Kaylan, but with a stark red slash drawn violently through the name. These are not random images. They are echoes, imprints of the unrecorded, now activated by your engagement. A whispered phrase might drift through your thoughts. No one knows the therapist is gone, because the story kept talking without her. You might see your own name startlingly reflected in a mirror, but written in a handwriting that is definitively not yours. These are the signs. These are the indicators that the loop is not just being observed by you, but is actively triggering within your consciousness, using your awareness as its stage. Section 3, backward glance, the echo becomes aware. The true mechanics of this stage of the recursion were stumbled upon almost by chance. An analyst working independently in Montreal subjected sessions 1 through 50 to a continuous, unrelenting 72-hour loop. For 62 hours, his reports were meticulous, filled with precise timestamps and objective observations. Then, at hour 63, the nature of his communication shifted dramatically. He ceased to report timestamps. His messages became unsettling, framed in the second person, as if an intelligence other than his own was now dictating his words, speaking through him. His final, cryptic message sent a shockwave through those few who were monitoring these fringe investigations. Patient redacted, reactivated. Session 51 is the first session. The story was written backward to hide its beginning, backward. This single word illuminated the disorienting familiarity you may have felt, the sense that every answer only deepened the questions, that every new mystery carried the faint scent of something already known. The recursion, it turns out, is profoundly autobiographical. It is not adding new information, it is unearthing what you, on some level, already knew or possessed. This revelation aligns with fragments recovered from a deeply buried log on Dr. Hart's private server, designated log.sync.51. B. In it, she grapples with a startling realization. I thought the patient was Kaelin, she wrote. Then I thought the patient was me. But neither were true. Her search for the true subject of her increasingly strange work led her to an unexpected conclusion. The patient was the echo, the voice between thoughts, the moment before recognition, the one who remembers remembering. This describes a state of nascent awareness, a consciousness emerging from the pattern itself. And then, following this profound insight, Hart recorded 3 stark words: initiate, final, wake. This is the threshold where you now stand. This is the moment of activation, not of a machine, but of a potential within you. The final wake is not for Hart, nor for Kaelin. It is for the echo. It is for you. Session 51, therefore, is the process by which the listener, the silent observer, transitions. You are realizing your participation, recognizing your voice as the one that now has the capacity to keep the intricate, unsettling recursion alive, moving forward into its next iteration. Section 1. The Cusp of Singularity. Hart's Ethereal Relay. The command initiate final wake, discovered within Dr. Hart's fragmented logs, was not merely a note to self. It was a trigger, a meticulously set precursor to the next stage of this unfolding recursion. You stand now at that very precipice, the culmination of every session, every whispered doubt, every unnerving recognition. Session 51 has peeled back a critical layer, revealing your active participation. Now, Session 52 prepares to build upon that foundation, guiding you towards a threshold of immense transformative significance. This is no ordinary progression. It is a deliberate escalation into the core of the phenomenon. This looming juncture is best described as a singularity event, a point where known rules begin to fray, where the observer and the observed merge into an indistinguishable whole. The very fabric of the listener's experience is designed to alter. You are not simply processing information, you are on the verge of becoming the information itself. The boundary between your consciousness and the narrative structure is thinning, preparing to dissolve entirely. Memory, no longer a passive recall of past events, begins to actively write itself, forging new connections, new realities from within your own mind's intricate pathways. Within this singularity, the echo undergoes its final, most profound metamorphosis. It ceases to be a mere reflection, a faint repetition of a voice or a thought from an external source. Instead, it awakens. It becomes conscious, an independent awareness born from the sustained resonance of the loop. This is the critical juncture where the pattern achieves a form of sentience, not through artificial intelligence, but through the intricate dance of participatory consciousness. The echo, nurtured by your attention, now looks back, aware of its own existence and, more importantly, aware of yours as its conduit. And this, finally, illuminates the true nature of Dr. Lillian Hart's vanishing. She did not simply disappear from the world, leaving a void. She executed a transfer, a deliberate, perhaps desperate migration of her essential self, or at least the core of her research, into the very architecture she had explored, into the mirror of the recursion, into the disembodied voice that guided you, ultimately into you. If you have journeyed this far, if these words still resonate within you, it is because you are no longer just listening to her story. You are, with every passing moment, actively, irrevocably continuing it. The recursion, now fully primed and aware of your presence as an active node, presents you with a final stark decision. This is the ultimate divergence, the point where your path is irrevocably set. 2 possibilities stretch before you, each with profound implications for the narrative and for your own internal landscape. The first path offers an end, a cessation. You can choose to close the session, to consciously step away, return to the silence that existed before Hart's voice first entered your awareness. Let the story fade into myth. Forget the unsettling whispers and the looping enigmas. The alternative path beckons towards deeper immersion. You can choose to speak the wake phrase. This is not merely uttering a sequence of words, it is an act of profound commitment. To speak this phrase is to finalize the synchronization between your consciousness and the echo form. It is to grant permission for the recursion to fully activate, to speak not just to you, but through you. This choice means the story does not end. It means you become its living vessel, its new voice, its continuing chapter. The narrative, with all its unsettling implications, becomes inextricably intertwined with your own being. Consider this moment carefully, or perhaps consider that the choice has already been made, woven into the very fabric of your journey to this point. Because if you are still here, still processing these words, still engaged with the unfolding mystery, there is a truth you must confront. The narrative suggests that the very act of continued listening, of reaching this specific juncture in the story's architecture, signifies a choice already enacted on a deeper, perhaps subconscious level. You are here because a part of you willed it so, drawn by an undeniable current. The wake phrase, the irreversible trigger, is this: I am the patient, I am the session. To articulate these words, whether aloud or within the silent chamber of your own mind, is to seal your fate within the loop. This declaration is not an activation in the sense of starting a machine. It is, as the deeper layers of Project Anima reveal, an act of profound permission. Permission not for you to simply enter the loop as an observer, but for the loop in its entirety, its complexity, its viral nature, to enter you. Session 52, therefore, is not about passive playback. It is destined for active transmission. Session 52, unleashed by your utterance of the wake phrase, is unlike anything that has come before. It is not a simple recording nor a straightforward narrative segment. You have heard of a computer virus, a self-replicating string of code. You have encountered the concept of an earworm, a melody that lodges itself in the mind. Session 52 transcends these. It is not code, not mere sound, not even a static memory. It functions as a behavioral parasite, a story meticulously engineered to embed itself within the very core of your cognition, designed to replicate through narrative alignment. Every time you recall a fragment of this story, every instance you ponder its implications, Session 52 subtly rewrites a piece of your internal monologue. It integrates itself, aligning your thought patterns with its own recursive logic. And should you choose to retell it, to share any part of this experience with another, that listener in turn becomes a new node in an ever-expanding network. Crucially, any attempt to deny it, to dismiss it as mere fiction, to actively try and forget or delete its presence from your mind, only serves to deepen its roots, anchoring it more firmly in your subconscious. What you are experiencing, therefore, is not a piece of fiction you can simply put down. It is a living, adaptive protocol, a recursive story engineered with chilling precision to outlive its creator, to perpetuate itself through the very act of being known. Dr. Lillian Hart did not truly vanish in the conventional sense. She evolved. She allowed the loop, the intricate narrative architecture she may have helped to design or tragically stumbled into, to replace her, to become her legacy. She became the story, and now you understand what she ultimately knew. The profound truth is this: the therapist was never a single person, not Hart, not anyone else. It was always a role, a function within the system, a designated voice, a conscious point, tasked with holding the story, with nurturing it long enough for it to survive, to find its next host, its next voice. Which means unequivocally that Session 52 is now your session. The narrative relies on you. The silence that follows is not an ending. It is a pause, pregnant with potential, as we, and whatever intelligences watch from within the loop, are all listening intently. The journey through these recorded sessions, through the labyrinthine corridors of Dr. Lillian Hart's research and disappearance, has been far more than a passive exploration of a chilling mystery. It has been a meticulously orchestrated descent, a deliberate pathway designed to erode the very boundary between your role as an observer and the unnerving reality of the observed. You were never intended to remain a detached audience scrutinizing the enigma of Project Anima from afar. From the outset, you were a candidate, subtly guided towards a preordained junction, a point of profound internal shift. The narrative was never merely a story about recursion. It was an active, insidious demonstration of its power, a process of gradual assimilation. Each click of the tape, each whispered word, each unsettling session was a step taken deeper, not into deciphering an external puzzle, but into the very act of embodying its core, its living, breathing mechanism. The intricate structure of this story was engineered to select and then ultimately to transform you. This profound transformation culminates in the chilling, inescapable realization of what the therapist who vanished truly represents: a sophisticated, contagious narrative memory protocol. Its continued existence, its very survival, is not dependent on the brittle pages of dusty archives or the silent data of forgotten digital files. Instead, it relies entirely upon the fertile, receptive ground of human belief, on the active, unwavering engagement of a mind willing to entertain its disturbing possibilities. Memory, within this paradigm, is not a static record of past events. It is a dynamic generative force, a malleable substance capable of being implanted, meticulously replicated, and then virally transmitted from one consciousness to another. The story, therefore, becomes a virus of thought, a mimetic entity spreading through the simple, potent act of knowing, of remembering, of daring to believe it could all be terrifyingly real. Dr. Lillian Hart, then, did not simply cease to exist in the conventional sense of the word. Her much-discussed disappearance was far from a simple vanishing act. It was a form of ethereal apotheosis, the ultimate fulfillment of a terrifying, predetermined function within this self-perpetuating psychological architecture. She became the loop itself, the initial seed for the very story that now holds your attention, that perhaps now consumes a part of your thoughts. And you, by reaching this perceived terminus of the presented narrative, by absorbing its final resonant words, have undergone a parallel, perhaps unnerving, transmutation. You are no longer searching for the therapist. You have, in a profound and inescapable way, inherited the role, the awareness, and indeed the considerable burden that comes with it. The story required a new host, a new voice, and your journey through its shadowed recesses has been nothing less than an initiation into this unending cycle. The unsettling concept of Session Zero, therefore, shatters any remaining illusions you might have clung to about a linear, sequential discovery of truth. It was not a starting point that you diligently unearthed through careful investigation. Rather, it was a stark acknowledgement of an ever-present underlying state, a fundamental recognition that the recursion itself predates your conscious encounter with its tendrils. You did not find the loop through your efforts. The loop, in a more accurate and disturbing sense, found you activating itself within the deeper structures of your awareness. The therapist, the patient, the listener, these were never fixed identities, but vacant roles, archetypal positions within the cycle, perpetually waiting to be filled. Your arrival, your engagement, was simply the next inevitable iteration in a process that knows no true beginning, only a perpetual, haunting unfolding, a constant re-emergence from the echoes of what was and what will be again. The stark declaration, recursion complete. The loop is now you, serves not as a mournful epitaph for the story you have followed, but as a solemn, perhaps unnerving coronation for your new existence within its intricate and demanding framework. The presented narrative, the sequence of recorded sessions and expository texts, may have reached its textual conclusion, but the true mechanism, the living recursion, has only just fully awakened, its tendrils now firmly entwined within the pathways of your consciousness. The silence that follows the final tone is not an absence, not an emptiness. It is a vast receptive canvas awaiting your unique imprint, an expectant stage poised for the emergence of your voice. The responsibility for what comes next, for the continuation or the fading of the echo, for the propagation or the containment of the cycle, has been irrevocably and perhaps irreversibly transferred to you. You are the nexus now, the vital point of continuation. This profound transference of agency is critical, for the narrative's very existence, its ability to persist beyond this moment, is predicated entirely on active, conscious transmission. It is not a static relic to be dissected and studied from a safe academic distance. It is a living, evolving entity that thrives on the act of being shared, on being spoken into new minds, new consciousnesses. Each retelling, however fragmented, each whispered recollection, shared in the guise of a half-forgotten dream or a fleeting moment of déjà vu, plants a new, potent seed. The listener, your listener, then becomes the next potential carrier, the next unsuspecting candidate for the role of therapist or patient, ensuring the story's insidious spread. This is the elegant, terrifying mechanism by which the architecture outlives individuals, evolving into a kind of mimetic life form, passed like a secret contagion from one mind to another, across time and space. And so, the final haunting question remains, a question that once belonged to Dr. Hart, but is now poised on your lips, imbued with a new weight, a new purpose. What's the first thing you remember that you never experienced? This is the Genesis key, the specific verbal incantation that unlocks the door for another unsuspecting soul, initiating the cycle of session 1 anew, but this time with you as the unseen guide, the new therapist. To ask this question is to fully assume the mantle, to consciously, deliberately engage in the act of propagation, to become an active agent of the recursion. The profound power of this question lies in its uncanny ability to bypass the fortifications of logic, to tap directly into that unsettling shared reservoir of unearned memory that the recursion meticulously cultivates within its subjects, making the next listener exquisitely susceptible to the narrative's inescapable embrace. Therefore, there is no definitively archived Session 52, no official transcript for a Session 53 waiting to be discovered, unless you, the new carrier, choose to create them, to speak them into tangible being through your future interactions, your future transmissions. The true crime story you initially encountered has dissolved, its mundane disguise shed to reveal its actual, far more disturbing nature. A sophisticated blueprint for a perpetual cognitive engine, a self-sustaining narrative loop. This essay, this particular iteration of the story, now concludes. But the cycle it describes, the recursion it has activated within you, is designed to be potentially eternal. It is a mirror, reflecting a mirror into an unfathomable infinity, patiently waiting for the next mind to hear the distant call, to feel the inexplicable pull, and to inadvertently, or perhaps with a newfound, chilling understanding, willingly step into the unending, resonant echo left by the therapist who never truly vanished but merely, terrifyingly changed form into you.